Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Ryan Ride Mechanic channel. How the heck are you doing today? Alright, today's video a little bit different today. You know what? It's cold. There's not a lot to do around here. There's no local parks in my area that are open. I'd have to go to either one of the coasts for some parks that are open because it's cold, it's winter, it's all that stuff outside. So I want to have some fun around here. But where do I go to have fun? Well, I'm going to go just down the highway to the next city over, Lincoln, Nebraska. I'm going to go have some fun there. And I want to bring you guys along for some backstage tour type stuff, which is going to be really interesting. So stay tuned.
Now get ready. Here we go.
I'm here at Sun Valley Lanes and Games to go inside and see what makes a bowling alley tick. So let's head inside. We're in Lincoln, Nebraska, which is, when a lot of people say Omaha, they'll think of Nebraska, it goes to Omaha. Well, Lincoln is just down the highway just a little bit, and Lincoln is actually the capital of the state. So we're actually in the state capital right now. So I'm here with John Lacido, right?
You got it, buddy.
You're the owner?
I am.
Okay. So I'm here inside of Lanes and Games, out here, Sun Valley Lanes and Games, and this place is really nice. They've got laser tag, an arcade, bowling, and of course, a special custom message for me right there. Does anyone see it? Anyone see that message? That's pretty cool, right? That's cool. All right, so I'm here with John, and what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be looking at what makes this place tick. So when you're out and about and it's the winter time, it's closed, the park is closed, and there's not a lot of stuff to do out and about. So people tend to look into their own cities, their areas, to find stuff fun to do. So I've come out here. This is a entertainment center. This is the closest thing to an amusement park that we're going to find this time of year because nothing else is open right now. And it's a great place to go and unwind. So they offer all sorts of stuff here. It's a really amazing facility. But there's one thing in particular that I know my viewers are going to want to know some more about, and that's right down there. At the end of that lane right there, there's a pin setter down there that's more mechanical than most anything I've ever seen, and I really want to dive into that and figure that out. But let's talk about this place for a little bit. So, John, how long have you worked here? How long have you owned the place?
I started back here in college in 1988. I came to bowl for the University of Nebraska. That's how I got out here on a scholarship to bowl.
Really?
Worked here in college.
Nice.
One thing led to another. Won a national championship in Nebraska. It was kind of fun.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
It's amazing.
I actually went and bowled on the Pro Tour for a while after I graduated here, but the gentleman who ended up being my business partner for a little while was the general manager and said, hey, if you ever want to come back, come back. Bowled on tour for a while, taught overseas for a little bit, and then decided to come back here to Lincoln, Nebraska, and bought in as a partner in 1998 and bought the partners out in 2011. So now I own the whole place.
So I got to ask, how did you come about my channel? Like, I would assume, like, if you're doing bowling stuff, I mean, if you're doing well, I guess it's all amusement in general, isn't it? It's like, well, how'd you come across my channel?
So I'm a roller coaster enthusiast, I'm not going to lie.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much. Actually, I'm a member of the American Coaster Enthusiasts, but as you know, here in Lincoln, Nebraska, it's Worlds of Fun's the closest place that we've got. So I love Worlds of Fun. I know some people down there. But anyway, ironically, I had my fork in my road late in high school and was either going to kind of go down the path of bowling, or I really kind of thought about going in the amusement park industry. Fairly decent in math and science, so I actually was looking at the engineering path.
Okay.
But then a gentleman that was a pro bowler that taught a bowling camp basically took me under his wing, and I went down the bowling path, and it worked out very well, obviously. But I grew up going to Hershey Park because I'm originally from upstate New York.
Oh, that's a really nice park.
It's a very nice park, and how can you not like rides and the smell of chocolate? I mean, it's kind of like a win-win. So that's kind of how it kind of went about, but I've always loved roller coasters and amusement park rides and the industry. It's it's kind of interesting because invariably there is a bit of a comparison of facility like this in the amusement park industry. So I go to IAPA and I stay in tune with what's going on, and stumbled across you and your great videos because I was always intrigued at how the rides work, between the PLCs and, all the stuff that controls it. And yeah, when you kind of like, perfect, there's a guy that actually lived it. So it's kind of great to be able to hear your stories, because you've got a lot of them, and that's pretty cool. So I just love following your channel, and I was shocked when I found out you were so close to me, and I was like, hey, that's pretty neat. So yeah, come on down if you ever want.
Yeah, so I grew up doing bowling, and one time, I think I was in like Boy Scouts or something when I was very young. One time, they let us go walk behind the scenes and walk behind the bowling alley, and I remember that was the first time I've ever seen that mechanical pin setter down there, and I was just like, wow, that is an amazing piece of equipment. I mean, this is just like an amusement park, essentially. You have every piece of equipment down there is making you money as long as it's running.
Correct.
And you
That's
have
the
to
key.
keep that running. And just like an amusement ride, when that thing breaks down, people are upset.
Yes.
And you are losing money at that point in time.
Yeah, and that's a problem.
Yeah. So it's funny enough, too, I've said this on my channel before. When I was moving from my last job not last job, but when I was moving from auto body technician, once I was working in a body shop, I put my resume out to a bunch of different places, and it was just stuff I wanted to go do because I wanted to have fun. I wanted to do what I wanted to do. I didn't want to just go to like an office job somewhere and just toil away at doing nothing. So I actually put my resume out to 3 different places. I put it out to 2 amusement parks and a bowling alley to work as a pin setter mechanic.
Yep.
And it's funny because one amusement park called me back and they said, we want to come and talk with you. And I got the interview, and they actually called me back and said, we want to hire you. So, and I got that job. That was amazing. Right after they said, we want to hire you, amusement park number 2 called me back and they said, we want to have you come in for an interview. But I didn't want to tempt fate, so I'm just like, I'm sorry, I've already got this other thing going. And then right after I hung up the phone with them, the bowling alley called me back and said, hey, you want to come in and be a pin setter tech? We could use you. And I'm like, well, that is funny. That's like, I put it in for all 3, and all 3 of them called me back. That was really interesting. So in a place like this, what does maintenance look like in your downtime? I mean, you've got laser tag, you've got arcade. I know arcade games can be a giant pain in the butt. So like, what's maintenance look like here? Do you have things on a regiment, a set timeline, or is it just kind of like reactive?
It's a great question, for sure. We have a maintenance team led by a gentleman named Paul, who has a degree in electrical engineering, which works out very, very well.
I like him already.
Yeah, you and him could hit it off, guaranteed. He really oversees everything from the pin spotters to the arcade games, the laser tag vests, the mini golf tee boxes and stuff. We have electronic based mini golf.
Oh, you have mini golf.
Yeah,
I completely forgot to list that.
It's technology based. It's pretty interesting.
Oh, we're gonna have to look at that.
Well, I'll show you.
Yeah, great.
So he and the HVAC. I mean, everything and anything in the building he gets to look at first, basically, and then he'll repair whatever he can. And he has a vast knowledge of stuff. And then he has a team of about 4 people. One of them is basically his true assistant. He really mainly oversees pin spotter stuff. And he's getting ready to retire, so there might be a position open here, Ryan.
Actually, I have a lot of. I found out after I posted some stuff on Vala's Pumpkin Patch when I went up there.
Oh,
I found out I actually have a fair number of viewers out here in the Lincoln, Omaha area.
We do have some routine maintenance stuff that we follow the manufacturer's recommendations, and kind of following stuff. The pin spotters, the main components of the pin spotters are about 60 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, which is kind of
These
amazing.
Exact pin spotters are 60 years old?
Yeah, they were.
Wow.
The original frames and the table assembly and stuff were manufactured in the mid to late 60s. And then there was a bowling boom in Japan in the late 60s, early 70s. The machines actually went over to Japan. And then the bowling boom went bust. And then a whole bunch of machines came back, and they built this place in 1977. So the machines came back refurbished through the manufacturer, which is AMF, was AMF back then, a company called Cubica, AMF now. So our machines, there's really 2 types of pin spotters in the bowling world. There's manufacturer named Brunswick, and their machine historically has been a very, very mechanically focused centered machine. So there's a lot of mechanical components, where the AMF machine was more electrical based. So the AMF machine is about 2/3 of the size of the Brunswick machine, and there are newer Brunswick machines, there are newer cubic AMF machines, but the 85% of the market is still these two machines because they run and run and run and run, and as long as you do the maintenance on them like anything else, and bowling is so popular worldwide, the manufacturer's still making the parts, so it's just a matter of doing the maintenance that you need to do and keeping things running.
Yeah, I actually follow a couple different people on YouTube about setter maintenance, and when I see them change parts out of a lot of different machines, they are not genteel used parts. They are like, they have worn holes into stuff. They have cut paths into steel. Like when they go bad, it looks like they really go bad.
Yeah, you just don't know. Ironically, and I thought that this has to be foreshadowing your visit. I happen to stop out here Saturday nights, and I'm here a lot during the day now. It's not as much as I used to close the place, right? But I just happened to stop in. I brought the staff some pizza and some snacks, and said, just checked in on everybody, and sure enough, as I'm just getting ready to leave, I hear on the radio, hey, there's a breakdown on 21, and I hear the mechanic come on and go, oh, it's going to be 10-15 minutes, and I thought, what happened? So I go wandering in the back, and really two parts broke. A pin got out of the what's called the bin assembly and fell into the table assembly, and it snapped the spotting cup and a lever assembly. In all my years, I've never had to change one. It's an aluminum cast piece. It's about this big, and normally they run and never have a reason to change them, and somehow it snapped in half last night, and I was like, what's the chance of that? And I'm in the machine getting it changed. Never got to change one, so I got that experience last night after all these years, so it's kind of fun. So it was actually down. He thought it was just the one part, and then when I looked at it, I went, oh no, this lever is broken. But it is what it is.
That's some interesting stuff.
I'll show you. I saved the parts just so you can see them.
Cool. I like it. It never failed. There's always been something in amusement rides too, where it's just like, this thing broke. We don't know how it broke, and then we contact the manufacturer, and even the manufacturer's like, how did that break? And I'm like, well, we don't know. And they're like, we've never seen that break before. Like, what happened? And it's just like, we'll start digging into it because I don't know what happened. And then it starts launching this investigation. It was like, all right, well, let's try to figure this out. To where we sometimes will send the part off to an engineering company so they can tell if it had like a metallurgical problem, like it was a casting defect. It just took a while to break and stuff like that. Or if it was something else, like when it was manufactured, they just did something poor when they put it together. We've had that a couple times too. But yeah, part failure is always very interesting to look at, because sometimes part failure just ends up being like, yeah, okay. And you throw it away and you get another one. But sometimes it's also like you throw it away, you get another one, put it in, and then like that one breaks. It's like,
yep,
another one. That one breaks. It's like, okay, bigger problem.
Something else is wrong.
Figure that one out. Yeah, yeah,
for sure.
All right, so tell me a little bit about these lanes. So growing up, I've always been on lanes, and my grandma was a bowler, my dad is a bowler, I bowl, my son bowls. So it's like, I know that there's wood, and I know that there's sometimes synthetic parts to the lane. Sometimes there's like original wood to the lanes. What's lane made out of? So
originally they were always made out of wood, pine and maple. Most of the lanes made in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, up into the 80s were hand built by craftsmen, because they're basically 39 boards about almost 3.5 inches thick this way, but only about an inch wide, and they were all nailed together. Well, of course, yeah, and that's how they were made forever. Of course, those craftsmen, that art kind of got lost, so the manufacturers started developing synthetic lane material that was actually first developed around the 70s, at some point in time. Of course, they've been refined and fine-tuned over time. So lanes will normally last anywhere from traditional wood lanes, I should say, proper maintenance and everything else, depending on the lineage of the facility will be 40, 50 years.
Wow.
So nobody's making them anymore. There hasn't been a real wood lane installed anywhere probably in 30 years, I would guess, maybe 20. So almost all the lanes now are synthetic. You will still find older places, and there'll be wood lanes out there that are now 70, 80, 90 years old, but their lineage isn't so high because what you have to do is come in and basically it's like resurfacing a floor. But that was an art too, but you only take off, a 1/16 of an inch, so you can do that for a while, 32nd of an inch somewhere in there. And then the lanes will still last. So there are still wood lanes out there, especially in smaller towns and older places. But most every new place now, it's synthetic lanes. And we have synthetic lanes here too now.
Nice. Well, I mean, this is the first thing your client sees, right? So they come up here, they grab most people probably come up with an alley ball unless you're on a league. And then they would grab their own ball, like I have my own.
Correct.
Custom, make sure it finds gutters all the time, but I mean, I deal with what I can. And you come up and you set it here on the ball return. So let's start with this piece of equipment.
Yeah, so the ball return holds a dozen balls or so. Of course, there's a hand dryer because having a dry hand is important for consistency in your shot making.
Yes,
balls travel underground. It's a simple S lift, basically, kind of like this. There's two tires basically in the middle that drive. One drives this way, the other drives that way. So the ball comes up through a S to get up to this height on the ball return. So, of course, there's some moving parts in there. You want to keep your hands away, obviously. Bad things will happen. So
we had a ball return stop working, and I don't know if they're all this way or just that one. It seemed like maybe the guy was just taking an extreme shortcut, but it had tripped an overpressure switch. He told us that it was basically if someone sticks their hand in there and the ball hits it.
That's that switch.
Oh, okay.
So now there's the warnings going off indicating that it's off.
And it takes the lane out of commission probably. Yep. So this one wasn't a nice paddle like that. It was some switch like way down in the corner over there, like the wheel was tensioned on it.
Okay.
And the way he had to reset it is he literally stuck his hand down next to the rotating wheel.
And then pushed the button?
And then pulled, pushed it
thank you.
back up. He did something where he and then pulled it out right as the wheel fired up again. And I'm just sitting there like,
oh no.
Oh my gosh.
No. So that'll continue to beep until we do a reset.
Do a reset on it?
It should. There it goes.
There it goes.
So it's a safety system.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it because I know, obviously you want to follow lockout, tag out and stuff like that. But I mean, I know there's plenty of things around, but man, sticking your hand right next to a wheel that's going to start back into motion, that's used to pulling a 15-pound ball vertically, kind of. I'm like, it did not seem like a good idea to me.
Hey, y'all. It's Daughter.
I think I got it.
We'll find out when it dries.
I decided to come to the bowling alley, too. And, I don't know much about bowling. I don't really like to bowl. Not my favorite activity. Pretty adorbs. Stay off the air gates. How cutesy is that? Anywho, I have no clue what they're talking about. I am mainly here to go get coffee afterwards. So, stay tuned, I guess.
Yeah, she's here for a coffee run afterwards. Yes, yeah. Too close.
Nope, that's too far.
No, my viewers have said this before.
Far.
It's too close. It's too close.
Huh, guys, that's too far away.
And of course, if I throw a ball, we'll be able to see the ball come up when it comes back. So I can hear it coming underground. And that's it. It's just that simple.
Man, that's very interesting. So the belt, it looks like is this a tensioner?
Yes.
Right here?
Good eye, Ryan. Good eye.
You could always tell the tensioner because it always has a slot right there. Now, of course, we're being extra careful because obviously the machine guard has been removed.
Yeah, so the motor is underneath, drives the belt obviously on the side. There's a control box that determines if the lane's on or not, controls the power to the hand dryer.
Now, how often, so is this machine also from the 60s?
No, these were installed basically around 2000.
Around 2000.
Yeah, so they're 25 years old or so.
I'm like, this is in remarkable shape if it's from the 60s.
Yeah, these were, the originals were replaced because over time they became problematic. And of course, we got fiberglass hoods. We do our own repair work sometimes. You can see this one cracked out at the bottom.
Yep.
You know, over time. But then we do the repair and then paint them back. And
is that from opening and closing them yourselves, or is that from people running into them and doing things like that?
It's been a little bit of both.
A little bit of both.
Yeah,
okay.
we've charged 2 customers for repairs when they've hit them. They're $1,700 each to buy them new. So
ouch.
Don't mess around with the ball return, folks.
Definitely not.
This was the very first pair of hyper bowling in the world. Hyper bowling basically has the bumpers are part of the game. They sense where the ball hits it, and then you get multipliers on your score. So it actually is a totally different game. It's called a non-traditional bowling game, but everybody gets to play with the bumpers.
You actually play, you're hitting the bumpers on purpose?
On purpose. Yeah.
Wow.
I'll show you that game if you want to see it.
Oh,
it's pretty fun.
Interesting.
The hyper bumper lights follow the ball. So when I throw the ball onto the lane, the hyper bumper lights light up and then follow the ball till they get to the pins.
That's cool.
And that's done through some magic of basically almost the same type of technology with a foul light. There's 6 ball speed sensors along the lane. So when the first 2 are broken, it can calculate the ball speed.
Okay.
And then mimics the lights to follow the ball speed. So that's how it's always basically right at the ball because it knows.
That's interesting. Wow. So if I'm one of those people that launch it out about the 10, 15 foot mark before the ball actually touches down on the lane, probably can't figure that out then.
It does, and it gives you a warning because that's called excessive lofting.
Okay.
And it'll put a warning on the screen. It'll say loft warning.
Loft warning. Typically when that happens, like my son will do that sometimes. The ball will stick because his hand's too wet, and he'll get it out there pretty far. I always joke with him. I said, "Did you call air traffic control first before that landed down there? Because that needed some landing clearance down that lane."
Yeah, lofting is bad.
That is super cool. Okay, so where do we start out here?
All right, so let's start with the front part of the lane. So the foul line. Foul line's key because, any shot that you make that your foot crosses over the foul line, it's basically an infrared sensor. So when the foot gets up to the foul line, it will go off, which means that you fouled. It's going to give you 0 for the score. So it's just a simple infrared transmitter and receiver in the same unit.
Yeah, I see that's your sender right down there. Well, sender and receiver, and then you have the retro reflector on this side. Oh, there you go.
So it's just a simple infrared transmitter and receiver. It is smart enough to know, people always think, oh, my ball went through it. Well, it can go through and not cause it to go off. It has to be on there for it's like 2/3 of a second, that if it's on, then it goes off.
Probably not using the term right, but I would call that like a debounce timer, where it can flicker for a second, but it doesn't actually trigger until it's maintained broken. Yeah,
and the flashing LED indicates the signal strength.
Oh, okay.
So we know when it's in alignment. But they're pretty much, they just go.
Nice.
We don't normally have to do too much to this. So then, and the reason why that's important, if people realize it or not, we actually have to put conditioner on the lane. So we never walk on the lane because we know we're going to fall down.
Oh,
not that I haven't done it, which is what the purpose of this capping is, to get to maintenance down the lane. So don't walk on the lane, folks. You're going to fall. Never walk on a lane because it's bad. So we don't have all the lights on in the building yet, so it seems a little bit dark.
Yeah, it's fine.
But when we get down here, then this device, now, the one thing that I can tell you, when you get down to about this section, you can walk on the lane because we don't apply the conditioner down here. That's what makes the bowling ball hook.
Okay.
So when you see bowlers on TV and the ball goes and it goes straight for a while, then all of a sudden it starts to hook, it's come off the conditioner and is now onto the drier part of the lane. Well, because it's dry and there's no conditioner, the ball has friction. And if it's rotating, then like anything else, like turning a tire, then it turns in the direction. So walking on the lane down here is not bad. But this device is the automatic scoring system camera. Oh. So what's unique about this is that at this one spot here, you can see all 10 pins on the one lane and all 10 pins on the other. So, well, if you want to come up here, we'll show you. You can kind of get the view because when you're standing in front of the pins, you can't see the 3 pins behind. But from this one section, you can basically see all 10 pins. So what happens is the scoring system camera is looking at the top of the, the top of the pins, and it can tell from the left and the right what pin is what, and that's how it identifies the pin.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, so as you get closer this way, you see the pin behind it.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's basic geometry. That's the one spot where you can see all 10 pins.
That's interesting.
So that's how they make that work. And then the other thing is there's 2 infrared transmitter receivers here. And what happens is that if I break both beams, if I just break the beams, the computer should think the ball's been thrown and activates the pin spotter. So it thinks I shot a gutter, so then it reset up the other 10 pins. So it must have been in second ball waiting for the spare ball to be thrown. And because of this is a fixed distance, if based on how fast the beam is broken, it calculates the ball speed and displays the ball speed. So if I go through it really quickly, it should cycle the machine really quickly. But this next time, I'll do it slower. The reason why it reversed and it's flashing red and green is because that's a running joke here that when you throw a gutter, it's called a Christmas tree because it will light up all the pin lights when we have it set in that mode. But now when I do it this time, and if I go through slower, it'll seem like nothing's happening, but it thinks that it's a slow ball, and then it's calculating when it thinks the ball would have left the pin deck, and then activates the pin spotter. So, now I'll knock down those 10, set up the other 10. It does it so quick because there's 20 pins in every lane. So there's the 10 you see, and then there's 10 being loaded.
10 being loaded. That's really interesting.
Yep, so that's the OMAX scoring system. Here, stay off the air gate sign, and I'll show you that from the back side. But it does all sorts of different scenes, animations, effects, but it will also indicate what you knock down. So in this case, it's going to display, that's a gutter, because it thinks I shot a gutter. So
what was that screen called again? Sorry.
The Neoverse.
Neoverse.
The Neoverse. We show TV. We got all sorts of cool stuff we can do it. We'll mess with that maybe a little bit later too.
All right.
All right, so let's go to the back side. And of course you can see the back side of the Neoverse if you want me to show you how that works. So, yeah, it's a very, very large video wall. We have some lighting behind it to give that effect. These actually will pop out. So if we have a bad panel or a panel that goes bad, some of the LEDs, it's just a simple 2 cable. It's a ribbon cable and a power cable. Technically, they're hot swappable, but we always shut off the power. Oh, and then you just line them up and
magnets hold them up. Nice.
And it's seamless. You can't tell where all the seams are. Once you get it all.
That's good. I could see them in person. I can kind of see some right here. But that's really hard to see. Yeah, the other side, you
can't see it from way back there. No. All right, so here's the pin spotter. We're going to take, this is the curtain assembly. This provides access to the pin spotter, but by USB-C rules, these are supposed to be mounted correctly, otherwise the pins bounce out. It changes the effective stuff. So, as I had previously said in the center, we're a beta site for one of the manufacturers. So, we actually have the first 26 lanes of the 32 are updated to the latest technology. But these last 6, they've asked us to keep the older technology. So that way, when they send out updates, software updates, other stuff, that they know it works both with the old and the new.
Right.
But the reason we're down here is because I can manually control the pin spotter easier here than I can over there because there's more safety systems than the ones over here. So not that we're not going to be safe.
Right.
To be clear, a pin spotter can kill you. It's happened before, unfortunately.
My son watches a lot of YouTube stuff, and he watches a lot of those people that they break in places and deal with it. Clearly, they've got permission. They're messing around, but they were at a bowling alley messing around. The machine was on, and he slid down and knocked the pins down, and I almost had a heart attack because in my mind, I'm like, the pin deck, right?
The table. In
the
our case,
table.
it's called a table. In Brunswick, it's called a deck.
Okay, so the pin table, in my mind, that could crush you if it came down on top.
I've seen videos like that too, and I just go, oh my God, these people, it's going to be the gene filter on the Darwin pool or whatever, the Darwin filter or whatever you want to call that, because it's just asking for trouble. And like I said, people, actually have been killed.
So how much, you might know this, you might not, I mean, one lane or maybe a pair together, I'm not sure. How much does one of these machines weigh? Do you know?
I actually didn't used to know that number. I think the number is about 800 pounds, depending on the assembly. I think is the I think maybe it's just this back end assembly is 800. I think the table assembly is like 4 or 5. But I think, well, of course, the front end of the assembly sits on the kickback of the lane. But I think for the wood, I think this section's about 800 pounds. All right. So that's to sit on the concrete.
So this is, it's safe to say this is easily a 1,000-pound piece of machinery.
Yes.
Easily, with a lot of moving parts.
Yep.
It is not something to be taken lightly. If you're ever at a bowling alley and you have some stupid idea to go run down the end of the alley, it's like, this is not something to be taken lightly. This can ruin your day and or life. Yep. So please treat it as such.
So I want to say there's about 3,000 parts on every pin spotter. We have a control box here, and it's a very simplified control box. It talks to what's known as the pin spotter chassis, which is that silver box up in the front corner.
Yep.
That's basically a industrial computer, for lack of a better description. And the things that are on the wall are actually all parts of the scoring system and the interface that talks to it. So between the scoring system computer, the pin spotter computer, it's always monitoring what's going on here, the ball return, the foul lights, all that stuff is being monitored. But I'm going to activate the pin spotter here. I have a button, the cycle button. Now we're going to see it go down and pick up the 10 pins. Oh, sorry. Knock those 10 over and set up these 10. Wow. This time, well, we'll let this go through first. So this is the distributor assembly. The distributor is basically a mechanical arm, and it's going to reposition the pins into the bin assembly into their proper pockets. And it goes through a pattern. 1, 3, 2, 4, 7, 8, 5, 6, 10, 9. And then it starts over. So this is the last pin. And when it goes in, then it goes back to the front and waits because it knows that there's more pins coming. Now this time, we're going to activate the pin spotter. It's going to go down and pick up the 10 pins. 10 Respot cells are going to grab onto every neck. They're self-centering, so wherever the pin is, it centers the fingers on. And then sets them back down per USB-C rule. They have to go back to where they started. This time, it's going to knock down the 10 and start up the other 10. So it doesn't matter which way the pin comes in. It could be head first or butt first. The butt end will always fall off first and falls onto the distributor assembly. And it works off a very simple cam system. This big black cam here on the side, it has what looks like a track on it, and it's just a simple spring assembly. This side controls, the front and the back. The other side of the cam has a pattern on it too. It controls the left-right.
Interesting.
So that's how it knows to get back to the proper spot. This time, I'm just going to sweep the pins off. And it's going to load the other 10 on top. And what happens is that when it goes to spot a set of pins, there's an assembly right here in the back, right where it looks like a T, right in front of your camera. That's called the shuttle assembly. Okay. That's going to go back and forth real quick, and it's only going to let one of the 2 pins in, because 2 pins can sit in every pocket. So this time when it sets, you'll see that move real quick. And that's how it only lets 1 pin into what's called the spotting cup. And that prevents what's called a double shuttle, which is when 2 pins accidentally fall through at the same time.
Honestly, this is so impressive in person watching all this happen because, you know me, I love machinery, I love stuff, I love working on rides. And it's this nitty gritty stuff that was always the hardest to maintain. I'm just looking at this like in awe and fascination. I'm just like, wow, this is some crazy looking stuff. And the fact that it's from the 60s,
Yeah.
and it's still just humming away, working great. Like, that's amazing.
It's pretty impressive.
Wow.
The motors and the electronics are updatable pretty quickly, but the brand new machine design is still pretty much exactly the same. Now they were able to kind of figure it out that maybe 4 parts in the distributor assembly could be made into one cast and some other stuff, but they're all pretty much interchangeable. They're called common parts that actually work back to the machines from the 50s and the 50s. That there's some, we know if the part number starts with 000, it can be used in every pin spotter from the 50s through now.
Nice.
It's kind of crazy.
So let me see if I have this right. This belt on top.
Yep.
That's your lacing right
Yes.
there.
Correct.
So the lacing is how you join 2 belts together.
Yep.
It's got a pin. You can actually pull it out of there.
Yes, and that's how we change the belt.
And that's how you change the belt. That's awesome. And then right here is the tensioner. See how the belt comes in the top?
You got it.
S is over and comes back down. And it's got a spring pulling tension on that belt.
Yep.
How often do you just wear through the ends of a tensioner?
Very rarely.
Very rarely.
Very rarely.
Because in amusement rides, it's really common if you have a spring hooked on something, it'll literally just chew right through the steel and make a new hole for us. Even though we spray lubricant and stuff on it, it will just destroy itself.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So I was curious. I'm like, yeah, has this happened? Like, yeah, every Wednesday we got to replace the spring or something.
It actually has a couple different notches. So it's on the lateral side. If to help the guidance of the tracking, if for whatever reason the belt was not completely true when they did the laces, we can actually set it so it kind of tries to drive the belt. So you can see at the very end at the tip that it looks like it's tracking to the right just a little bit, but it's still within the spec, so it doesn't cause a problem. But we could take that tensioner and try to guide the belt back a little bit, but since it's operating without a problem, we just let it go.
Yep. For those of you that deal with like log flume rides and things like that, where they have a belt lifting, it's typically the log up, on that towards the top of the lift hill. Belt tracking, that's what he's talking about. That tracking left to right is the number one thing that those mechanics really have to fight with, because if the belt runs dry, because water is its lubrication, so if it runs dry or hot on one side, the belt will literally expand oblong, and then it will start to track on that head pulley. It'll start to track to one side or the other, and then the mechanic has to go up there and adjust the top pulley. I mean, I'm not saying it's adjusted here, but you have to adjust it up there, and you have to adjust that back and forth in order to get this belt to run true in the center. Otherwise, it could literally roll off the side, and then you lose the entire belt, and the whole ride goes down for a long time.
Which is, again, they need to make money, so they need to run.
Yeah. It's got to run.
Let's show you the front end. All right, so there's 2 halves of the machine. Basically, this is the table assembly. It's the part that sets the pins. Yep, you can get down here. And then this half is the sweep assembly. Now they operate and monitor themselves with 3 cams. So based on the position of the cams, and we can see here that they actually have different shapes. So you can see this from the side that these cams, like this is the top of this one. And then, yep. Yeah. So if I pull this one cam out, it's going to activate the sweep. And based on where the cams are, which is opening and closing, it knows when to stop at guard and when to stop at guard on the way back. That's how it determines where the sweep is. The table works similarly. So when I pull on the table, it will run. I can let go of it because it'll try to center itself to home. And then the other two on each, the table and the sweep, monitor what's called the interlock. So to prevent the sweep from running into the table, they monitor each other. And if one gets too close to the other, the machine automatically stops to prevent damage to the machine. Because obviously, like we said, these motors, they'll just run.
They will just run.
And until something breaks the motor clicks on, to basically where it draws so much power that it just automatically shuts itself off. it would do a lot of damage to the table assembly or the sweep assembly. So the interlock function prevents them from getting too close. So here on the table assembly, this is the clevis assembly, and the clevis has a mechanism that will cause it to release and go all the way down to the lane. So it will, by default, it will only go halfway, but if I hold this down, it activates the release, and then it spots the pins.
Okay.
So this release causes the clevis to open, and then basically causes the drive to double in length.
Wow.
Because it releases this offset wheel in a sense. So it releases, and of course then the offset wheel then allows it to expand length, and then that little distance causes it to go all the way down.
Holy crap.
That's how the table assembly works.
So this stuff looks, I don't know if it's just shiny, the lighting or whatever, but this stuff looks oily.
Yep.
I see grease marks on there.
Yep.
How often is this, how often do you have to oil and grease this stuff? Because I mean, this is so intricate. In my mind, this is like a restraint assembly, basically. It's like, okay, if you don't keep it oily and happy, it's going to mess up, and it's not going to be good when it does.
Yeah. So depending on what it is, so like gearbox oils, like every 5 to 10 years, we're supposed to change out the gearbox oil. But stuff like this, every 6 months or something, we're supposed to come through and pop the Zerp, just to make sure it looks good. We'll hear stuff.
Okay.
We'll hear, this, squeaking, and we know certain squeaks relate to certain things. So
probably when it happens in the cycle, when it does this or does that, goes, it's like, oh, we know exactly what it's driving.
Yeah, or what's it's either we're getting down to it's out of grease or whatever the case might be. Now I have seen these break. We were talking about how the spring wears these out because there's a lot of tension on these, and the biggest spring we have is called the counterbalance spring, and that's that spring, if you can see it right through there. When they snap, you hear it. Everybody will know.
Spring.
It's a big spring, and of course it's designed to pull the table back up. And of course, if the table goes all the way down, it extends a whole bunch.
So the Huss Frisbee that I used to work on, that is almost the exact same size spring that we used to open the restraints at the end. When the restraints would just go with the fling and they come open at the end, it's a spring about that size, because it takes a person and a half or 2 people to wrangle that thing down to actually connect it before the restraint goes under tension. Like,
I absolutely believe you, because sometimes we have to get 2 of us to put those springs back on.
Pull it back on, and it's so hard to get the hook on. That's the hard part, is to get the hook on the end. You got 2 people fighting as hard as they
can't get it past that hook.
And you're just
exactly
like,
what you're just like,
come on, go. And then the worst thing is, because it's kind of like a worker safety issue, because it's like the worst thing is right at the very end. When you got that hook down there, if either one feels like they're going to let it go, you now have a hook that's about to pass through your hands if you let it go. So you wear gloves, you do all sorts of stuff, but it's under the understanding that if anyone feels like they're about to lose it, you quickly let the tension off, because it collapses. That way it's safe to let go, because those are some nasty springs.
Yes, I agree. Oh. All right, so this is the front end.
Okay.
So let's climb on top of the machine. You can see it from above. All right, so the newer ones are easy to get up on. They have actually full ladders, but this one's pretty straightforward. So you just put here.
Notice we're going to machines that
step
are
up.
off.
Basically, if you stay, within the yellow, you're fine. So come on up. And then you can step on this, and of course step over. So to see it from above is a bit different. So here is one of the pinspotter chassis. So it basically has a control board, basically like an MP processor board. It's got 3 relays, 2, I think, they used to be Allen Bradley. I know you like Allen Bradley.
I do like Allen Bradley.
These are the table and sweep contacts to run the table and sweep motor. So this is the program 0 button. It resets everything. And then on this side, I have a cycle button. So I'm going to cycle the machine. So with pins in it, it's a little bit difficult to see.
Yeah.
But we'll cycle it again. And now it's going to sweep.
Wow.
And we'll cycle it again. So now you get to see it while it's going up and down. It creates that gap. But the shuttle assembly and what they look like, what we call the bat wings, prevent the pin from falling through. And then the pin spotter chassis knows that not all the pins are up here. It knows that the 9 pin has one more pin to go because there's a bin switch, which is this switch right here. So basically, that's what activates the pin spotter to reset the pins.
Now, does it only look for the pin switch after everything, or can you tap any time and it just thinks it's full?
No, it physically waits for the actual pin to fall in there. It can wait forever. What happens a lot of times, actually, is sometimes a pin will fall out of a machine, or sometimes it just sits and rolls in the bottom. It waits for one of the pins from the other racks to come up and then falls in. Now, the thing that we get the most common problem that we get is called a pileup. So I'll show you what happens in a pileup. But basically, one of the pins doesn't come off the wheel correctly. So invariably what will happen is that 2 pins will get too close and they jam on the distributor arm. So here,
Sweet.
so it tries to correct itself, and then what happens is something like that. So now we have a pin in the table, what we call a pin in the table. And like I said, sometimes it gets it, sometimes it doesn't. But usually what will happen is it'll be something like this. And then the pins will start falling off the end.
Yeah.
And then we hear this sound, and we'll get one probably right now, maybe not. Yeah, when we hear that loud, like,
I just dropped something.
yeah, that it invariably is this. That sound, we know that there's a pileup. And what happens, so because this machine's piled up, and now this pin spotter can't reset, after 30 seconds, it's going to call for help. And it calls, we have the ability to put it on our cell phones or call the phone in the shop, but it's also going to light up a light, and we're going to hear the computer say, sweep error, lane 32. So it should be any second now. Oh, and then that happens too. Where is it?
So it's completely jammed.
Lane 32, sweep error. Lane 32, sweep error.
Hey
So-
Siri, fix my sweep error.
Exactly.
I guess that doesn't work yet.
So on the lane, on the upper monitor, there's a message that says a problem has been detected and the technician has been called. Now we're tracking how long it takes the technician to get here. It's part of what they do when they have goals of trying to fix stuff in X amount of time. But when they arrive, and invariably, and yes, remember I'm a trained professional, so
Yep. Don't try this at your bowling alley.
there is a button right here that we push,
Lane 32,
and it'll stop her from calling the call. The light turns solid, and now a message is indicating on the scoring monitor. It says the technician has arrived and repairs are in progress. So then the goal is that obviously we have to fix the jam. So we put the pins back. Now we know the pattern that they go in. Now 2 things are going to happen. One, I actually have a pinwheel jam, and the motor is still running.
Yeah, I
But
see
see,
that.
it's slipping. The tensioner is letting it slip on the
Okay.
sheave.
It's got a tensioner clutch on it to prevent probably from breaking stuff, which is great.
There's 2 ways to fix this. Either you can try to pull it out with our hands, or you basically bang it. Now, in this case, because I have a pin that's in the table that's not in the spotting cup, I'm actually going to override the cycle. Now, and then I'm going to come up here and I'm going to run the table. That's exactly what I thought was going to happen. So that pin now is going to come back up and it fell back into the cup.
Okay.
So now in theory we should be good, which we are. So now if I come back down here and I cycle the pin spotter again, whoops, I'm doing a reset.
Backwards on the other side
Yep.
blind. A little hard, huh?
It is a little bit hard. I know I'm hitting that button. Odd. This is the fun part.
This is exactly
This is-
like a ride call, by the way. This is exactly the same thing.
Yep, you have to get stuff where it needs to go.
Yep. 3/4 of a ride call is about getting the machine back into the spot where it needs to be before you can restart it.
Yep, so we would call this maintenance mode. So now we're out of maintenance mode. And now the machine's back working. And then what I would normally do is I would take these pins and put them back into the pockets that they go. So climb up there. But it's the end, I gotta go around. And then it's literally it's done. We jump off and we clear the call because the light's still on. I hit the button, it clears the light, and now there's a message on the monitor that says all is okay, thank you for waiting.
Nice.
So
Yeah, this is
But-
exactly like ride calls because you go back, you got to figure out what happened, and figure out you've got to put the machine back into its right place.
Yeah.
And then a lot of times getting the machine up and running, it typically messes up a little bit more. So it's like, okay, so you got to reset it all again. Then, yep, all right, now we're back up and running.
yeah, so literally about 70% of our pin spotter calls are that call. Now, the first 16 lanes, so we'll go down. Let's look at that. We'll take a walk, Ryan. Faith, you can do this. So you're just going to walk across the top here.
Sure.
And we're going to get down to the first 16 lanes.
It's honestly not hard. It's not until you get up like 100 feet off the ground doing this, that's when it starts getting difficult.
See, that machine's running because it's waiting for the last pin.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yep. So, and that's why it's flashing green. But now we're getting to the newer technology of the electronics.
Yeah, you got an indicator stack.
Yep. Well, when we get down here, so this is basically, it's a retrofit kit, but the brand new pin spotters are designed like this today. And this is called an Edge upgrade. But the difference is, and you can kind of see how this is higher compared to the red pinwheel.
Oh, yeah.
This is more egg-shaped as opposed to a true circle. The difference in this height allows the pin, when it comes out of it basically falls, and that eliminates almost all the pin jams.
Oh, okay.
Because the rolling,
Yep.
you have to have that centered correctly, both height-wise and left-right. Because sometimes if the pin comes up one way, it rolls too fast. Where this, they just fall. And then that falling is consistent. Gravity is your friend.
Yeah. Yeah.
So these 16 lanes actually run really well, but it's not cheap. I mean, it's $15,000 a pair to upgrade them. So we do that as time
Yeah.
and CapEx allows.
Oh, absolutely.
So
What do you shoot for on machines like these? You try to, it's like an upgrade. You say, like a pair of lanes per year, or
yeah, so there's a big trend now. So what's happening? String pin spotters were just approved by the United States Bowling Congress. String.
oh, like the pins on a
The
string.
pins are on strings.
Oh, okay.
They
Yeah.
figured out scoring-wise that they're almost exactly the same.
Uh-huh.
But the issue is in the industry, technicians are becoming harder and harder to come by.
Yeah.
Like the building of the wood lanes, 40 years ago, that art is becoming a lost art. So the string ones will run and run and run and run, and they have very few maintenance issues. But, you know, if you have a true technician, pin spotter techs, or a crew of them, these things will run and run and run also. It's just a matter of, you know, there's more work to them. I mean, we have we probably spend 30 grand a year in pin spotter parts, you know, when it's all said and done. So about $1,000 a lane, I guess, you know, depending on what we're doing and stuff. I mean, I would say that's on the high end. I think we probably have years that are less. But we do more preventative than most places. We change out parts sometimes just when they're starting to get, this looks sort of worn, let's get it out of here. But because we're so busy, we kind of have to do that. So it offsets sooner or later. So when we come down, we're going to come down here now. All right. This one's easier to get down. It actually has a maintenance ladder. And you can see the difference in the technology. So this one pin spotter chassis controls both lanes. So, and it's got a display. And it's indicating right now, I think it says bin switch, because it's looking for the other pin. Yep. I'm trying to see if there's... Yep, and there it is. And you'll see that pin is like rotating at the very bottom of the pin deck.
Oh, yep, there it is.
Yeah, so
It's on the roller.
we're going to take our trusty pin hook, and all we're going to do is force it to turn around. And where is it? There it comes. So when it comes up here, then that light's going to go off, and it's probably going to power down. Because it's done. It's happy.
Nice. And there's a good look at your lacing right there. There you go. Nice.
So the other difference is this is made out of, I forgot the name of the plastic, but it's that high...
ABS?
Yeah, I think so.
I think, okay.
And if the pin plows, which used to be steel on the other side, are now that plastic also. They take a lot of impacts. I mean, these things get hit hard.
Is that a roller chain down there?
Yes. So these actually use, a roller chain. Which we can show you on the wall exactly what it looks like from the inside.
I'm loving this stuff. It's awesome.
So it's not like we can go to Menards and buy spare parts, right? And they just have to come from the manufacturer. What this is close to our roller coaster lift chains that I have.
Yep, that's pretty much, I mean, that's it. It's a little smaller, but yep, same stuff. This is this roller style lift chain like this. This is what you would find on an S&S, like a free spin. Anything with a vertical lift pretty much has these guys, because you can get it to go around a 90 degree.
Yep.
And then back up and over. So imagine this just where the distance between these two is between my fingers, you know, and the chain's about that wide. And that's a vertical lift chain.
Yep. So, and of course these are the pin cups to help pull the pin up. Yep. So it centers the top of the pin, and it basically sits in there and then pulls it up the chain. Or it could go the other way. You know, it figures out how to come. And then this is the track that it sits in.
Oh, okay. That's your, I would call
so
that
that's the wear component.
Yeah.
And they rarely go out. I mean, probably they last 5, 6, 7 years, depending on the lineage.
Nice.
So, yeah, here's a completed assembly to get an idea of what it looks like when it's all said and done.
Okay.
And then this is the bin assembly, which you can obviously see the shape of the pin pockets. This is in-center repair. They didn't have the repair kit originally, so my guy did it like that. Now they actually have the material that actually does it, make it look...
You have to weld that, or is it fiberglass back together?
It's that ABS plastic. So it's got some, like it kind of like melts it, kind of like a
chemical?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes it hot enough where it like...
Yep, that's like a
kind of
chemical
goes back
weld.
together. So...
Wow.
Yeah, that's...
Fun stuff.
That's that. So we'll go in the maintenance shop. See that too. That one's around. There's a pin missing in there somewhere. That one's right there. So this is pretty simple. This is the access. We didn't talk about the balls, so we can.
Why? I say you can cover the lower deck stuff.
Yeah. So now in Europe, if you take this guard off, the machine shuts off.
Yeah.
But we don't have that here in the U.S. And that falls in. Now the timer will shut off in a minute or two. Sometimes they shut off instantly, sometimes they wait. These 6 are actually a newer version of the software that we're testing. This is the maintenance shop. So he keeps built assemblies. I'll go turn the light on at the other end. We've tested infrared for the cameras, for the pins, the scoring, so they made pins black for us so we could test
I was about to say, when you're using the cameras up there, how does it react with other color pins?
It's a great question. So it uses infrared light also, because that was part of the advancement when they added pin deck lighting that was colored.
Oh, look at that.
So, yeah, we have a camera system so he can go back and monitor. It records. So he can go back and kind of see what happened, to cause the original issue.
Yeah.
And then basically this computer logs into the scoring system, and then he records any notes on the call. So a light will go off of the light up right above your head behind the fan. If we create a call, it will blink that light, and then it calls one of these phones, and then he listens to hear what it is. So, if we're telling them from the front desk to respot the 3-pin, we type in respot 3, we select the lane, and then that computer calls him and says respot 3, lane 32, and that's how he knows to go off to do that stuff. So
what's the number one job back here? I mean, I see, I'm obviously keeping the machines running, but I see you got a rebuild bench here.
Yep.
So like, what's the number one thing that's really taken apart and worked on while, I guess,
the number one thing? That's a great question. We got all sorts of different things that we do work on. Here's that part here's the parts that broke last night. So what happened, and this is an aluminum cast spotting cup. So this is the shape of the pin, right? So the pin falls in, it turns, it drops the pin off. There must have been a pin fell out of the bin assembly, it fell into this, and then this lever, this is the part I had never changed before, another part snapped off. So it must have gotten caught between here and this was the 6-pin cup on lane 21 last night, and snapped this off. Well, then that causes all the Respot cells not to work. So I had to figure out, first of all, like I said, I never changed it, but basically it was simple as 2 X washers were holding the pins in, and then one nut on top of a fixed case bolt. So I was unscrew the nut, take off the one X washer, take off the one on the other side, and prop it back in, X washer, and it was back up and running. Wow. So, but Respot cells, we do, you can tell it's fresh, right? I mean, it just snapped off because you can see the white, right? And that's kind of how you know. In general, it just snapped right through. But that would have been an original part. I mean, there would have been no reason ever to change that part because it's not something that we normally have to do.
Yeah, that's really odd because normally, it's not next to the corners where I would expect a crack to start.
Right.
This, I would say, with just the break and how it came across and everything, I would say this more was just sheer ran into something, just brute force and ignorance.
Whatever the pin was, that was them between that, because that's located next to this.
Yeah.
So the pin must have fallen through, and like again, we're talking about the strength of the motors and stuff. That motor tries to drive. So it basically snapped this in half and snapped that in half because the pin was jammed and it was trying to finish its cycle. Which is why, we tell people don't mess around with a pin spotter.
Those are machines.
They are machines.
Don't mess with machines. Same with rides. Don't mess with them because
bad things.
This can be you.
Yeah.
Right? This can be you. So don't mess with it.
But Respot cell assembly, sometimes let me get one. I'll be right back. I'll show you how the Respot cell assemblies work. Cup. This is what a spotting cup should look like. Basically, a pin falls in, the machine turns, and when it sets it, it pulls these back, and then it just clears the pin and then flips it right when it gets to the top, which is how it does that. Well, one of the things we talk about that we will rebuild the Respot cell. So this is a Respot cell assembly. 9 of the 10 are exactly the same. The 7-pin one has a different pin on it here because it connects to the drive assembly that controls them all.
Okay. That would be like, I saw that the master.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, exactly. And then it doesn't matter where the pin goes, or even if the pin's wobbling, when this comes down, it will push closed, and then it pulls them up, And then when it comes back down, then the weight, basically the weight of it is what kind of keeps it locked.
Oh.
And as soon as it gets to the point where it will release, then you can kind of feel how it, like, I don't know if you saw, it basically released the lock. So when I do this, it's the weight. And then when it comes down and I just loses the weight, then this loses its tension, and then it can easily open the fingers. And they basically work on one's short shaft, one's a long shaft. So one finger technically sits a little bit higher, but they flip it over. So basically the diameter of this touches the pin at the same place. And you know, it'll...
And what's locking that together right
It's
now?
just the see how this has this little notch? So when the bolt sits into the notch, then that notch kind of locks it. I don't want to say locks, but kind of keeps some pressure on it.
Oh,
and
I
then when
see.
it comes off, and then that notch is easier to pull out of.
That's what she said.
I
So-
see. And since the distance between these two is fixed with this, as long as it's extended all the way out,
Yep.
it holds the assembly in place.
Correct.
Man, that is genius.
Yeah.
That is just absolutely remarkable. I always wondered how those things work.
Well, the other thing is, before automatic scoring, this is a wire clip, and there is a little nylon stopper in here. And what would happen is that when this would close, if nothing was there, it would not touch the stopper. But if there's a pin in there and it closes, then this will ground out. And that grounding basically told this wire to complete the circuit, and then that's how it knew if a pin was standing or if a pin wasn't standing.
Wow.
Back in the day, back in like
Wow.
the 60s, 70s, before the advent of automatic scoring.
Oh,
The automatic scoring now
man.
controls the pin spotter.
Well,
but
you
that's
talk
how we
about
used
a
to do it.
complex pain in the butt. There
Yeah.
you go.
Yeah, that's how they used to do it.
I
So
can't, and then that's in the pin. What's that called?
Respot self, what?
The
Table.
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 That's in the pin table. So how do you even get into work on that in the old days? I mean, like,
Well, you would find out pretty quickly, because if you got 9 and the only pin you left was this and the wire was off,
Yeah.
it would pick this pin up, and then the machine would go try to set on top of it, and then as it opened, the machine would override and force open these, and then
drop it.
try to set on top of it, and
man.
pins would go everywhere. And then you would get the call, hey, reset the 6-pin. Well, then we knew to look at the 6-pin wire to see if it was on, because that's what would happen.
Okay, so while we got our guest sitting here right now, tell me about this. This is the star of the program, right?
Yep.
But how do these things? What are they made out of? How do they take the repeated abuse of
Great
a
question.
15-pound ball going 20 miles an hour hitting it?
So pins are made out of maple. They basically take 1 inch by 1 inch hard maple, and they glue multiple pieces together to get the overall big shape, and it will look like this. Put them on a lathe, they grind down the lathe to make it the shape of the pin, and then they dip the pin, because the purpose, that's got a hole in the bottom specifically for the, I shouldn't say that, they don't anymore. Back in the day, they used to dip the pin to get the coating on. Now it's a Surlyn injected process. They put the pin in and basically inject Surlyn in a mold,
Uh-huh.
and has a special shape at the bottom to put the ring in, and the ring locks in, because the ring's made out of a harder material. Actually, they're both hard materials, but the ring is designed to take the impact of this over and over.
Okay. So that essentially that's your weakest point right there. So they made
Yep.
a reinforcement so it saves the pin.
Yes, exactly.
Nice. Okay.
But this plastic is Surlyn. Surlyn's the same plastic that covers golf balls.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, and of course it's brutally hard.
Wow.
Designed specifically to take the impact of the bowling balls over and over. Now, invariably, what happens over time is that sooner or later the wood starts to give way underneath, and then we'll get some cracks, and you'll start to see where like these stress fracture lines start to show up.
Okay.
And then sooner or later, then that pin will the Surlyn will start to crack on the edge if we replace it.
So this would be like on a roller coaster wheel where the urethane starts cracking on the outside. We start know like, okay, we're going to start watching that one. Some rides you have to replace them as soon as it happens, but some rides you're like, okay, we're just going to watch this
For a
and
little
see
bit.
how it does. But I imagine, how often do you ever do pin inspections? I mean,
We
that seems like a pain in the butt waste of time.
So the mechanics, the techs will, if they're fixing a pin jam or something,
Yeah.
they see a pin that's like, oh, that pin's cracked. They set it aside, right? And then they go and get another spare. We keep spares, obviously,
Yeah.
because you just don't go to Menards and buy one of these. They're currently about $23-24 a pin.
Oh, okay. That was my next question: is how much does one cost?
And these will last about a year and a half in this facility.
Wow, that's pretty good.
So
Now, I noticed back over there you had a box that said "Still good, don't sell."
yep. So
You guys sell the old ones?
we sell the old ones. We sell them
Okay.
for $2-3 each.
Oh,
Usually
nice.
people use them for target practice and stuff like that. We
Really?
get high school teams that decorate them and give them to seniors, stuff, whatever the case might be.
Growing up, I always used to have my birthday parties at a bowling alley, and that was one of the things. They took a bowling pin and they coated it in, I don't know if it was just like white spray paint or maybe like a plaster or something like that. And then at the birthday party, all the friends would sign the pin.
Yep.
So I had, I think, 7 birthday parties at a bowling alley, because I love to go to the bowling alley. It's so much fun. So actually, like at one point in my room as a kid, I had 7 bowling pins sitting in there, and I always joked about, I'm going to get up to 10. I'm going to make a full set one time. And then I would try, like I actually did the other stuff. I brought them out into the backyard. I set them up and I threw my ball down there, like just messing around, But it's like, so I always wondered about the pins.
Yep, they'll last. I bowled on the sidewalk as a kid.
Yeah.
Yep, same thing. Of course, motors, gearboxes, pinspotter chassis, all sorts of all scoring components, spare stuff that we keep or test for the manufacturer. But yeah, I mean it's a lot of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, you got to keep everything working in the entire place, and this is your storeroom to do it, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
The one thing we didn't talk about, it's occurring to me now, is the ball return.
Oh,
ball
yeah,
return
let's-
system. So
Let's talk about this big moving belt and the ball return.
So it looks like either he put this out last night for a reason, or it fell off the wall. It's one or the other. So I'll wait for
Either
Sean
way.
to come in to see if there's a note that I'm not aware of. But that's a down sweep track. That's what the ball goes down from the top.
That's the roller coaster ride.
Yes. So this is our ball lift is our lift hill. So there's 2 parts of this. So in our machines, and you can see this continual moving carpet, what's called the bounce plate assembly is basically funnel. It's got like a small funnel built into it, and then it also leans in that direction. So even if we shut this off and we set a ball here, which I could go get, the ball will try to navigate over to this hole. Now inside that hole, there is a paddle assembly. And that paddle assembly works off of a mechanical cam sensor, which basically has what we call 2 gears. It has low gear and high gear. So by default, it will operate in low gear. And if a pin gets in that hole, it has to try to determine mechanically if it's a ball or a pin. Because obviously you don't want a pin going in there and trying to get in the ball return messes everything up.
That would be bad.
So if a pin and a ball get in there, then what happens, it determines at first that it thinks it's a ball. So it basically, the low gear allows that paddle to come off the cam. But then the drive mechanism basically drives back and forth, left, right, which I can show you from behind. But then after one pass, it automatically goes into high gear, and then it takes that paddle assembly and locks it in place and then pushes. So it thinks, oh, it's a pin by mistake.
Oh, okay.
So that way looks like it's kind of fumbling for a second, but it's determining if it's giving it the chance that it's a ball when it's really a pin. But then the next thing, it'll force it out, and then the pin will go by because of the carpet belt underneath it, and then the ball goes in and it goes up.
Okay.
So on this side, let's see.
This is so nerdy. I love it. I absolutely love it.
So here we can see the cam assembly. It's called the light ball sensor. So this is it here, and then these are the gears, basically. So in one pass, and of course you gotta be careful because there's belts,
Oh, yeah.
it will basically allow the arm, which the paddle's controlled to go off and then lock into the cam and then push out. Is one part. And then the other part is the other assembly, and I'm going to example what it is. So I'm going to push this, and we're going to see this thing's trying to turn. And what happens is that's the kicker assembly. So when the weight of the ball hits the bottom of the ball door, it basically pulls this rod down, and when it pulls down, then basically this mechanism opens up and grabs onto all of these little basically rubber stoppers. So this basically opens. You can kind of see, and then it locks it in, and then this drives it around and basically takes that paddle and pushes up. So then the ball actually gets pushed into the ball lift belt, grabs onto the ball lift belt, and starts getting dragged up.
Interesting.
That's how that part works.
That's really interesting. I always thought it was just something that was constantly running, and as soon as anything got in there, it was just like, go.
Yep. Nope. So it's a mechanical sensor based on the weight. It feels the weight of the ball.
Wow.
Goes down, pulls up, and then drives it up. So let me go grab a ball.
One of the nerdiest things I've ever done.
All right. I'm going to show you how the ball, like if I just set this down, see how it tries to roll itself over to that hole?
Yep.
So now the paddle assembly's blocking it out. But when I turn this on, then that paddle is going to engage. So maybe, want to see it from the side maybe? And then we'll show it again from behind. And then away it goes. And then we'll show it again from behind. And then away it goes.
That's so quick.
It's very quick. So let me go get the ball and we'll do it again, and you can watch it from in between and see what it does.
So it came in to right there, and then that belt pulled it all the way up, essentially the lift hill, and then out into the run track, out to the ball return. Wow.
All right, you ready?
I think so.
Okay, so here's the ball in the machine. It's going to hit that and up and goes. It's going to hit that and up and goes. It's going to hit that and up and goes. It's just that quick.
Wow.
It's fast.
That is fast. That's pretty incredible. Now, that belt that's running,
Yep.
is that anything special? I mean, because it's so unlike the pins, which are just kind of gravity out there. Okay, they drop down. The ball, my experience is it's greasy.
Yes.
So I mean, it's oily,
Yep.
whatever you want to call it. So you have a belt that has to lift that vertically. What is that? 4 feet?
Yeah.
I mean, granted, it's at an angle, but I mean, crap, that's like a 75-degree angle. That's still really vertical.
Yeah.
Is
So
there something special to that belt?
the belt is made of a material that's kind of, say porous isn't quite the right word, but and it's not necessarily tacky, but it has a little bit of surface to it.
Okay.
So it is able to kind of still grab onto most of the ball. Now we do get some bowling balls, especially if they're old, like we're talking hard rubber bowling balls from the 60s and 70s,
Okay.
that people find in a garage sale or whatever. And they come, and sometimes the balls will do what we call yo-yoing, which the kicker assembly can get it up, and the belt can start because there's a lot of pressure towards the bottom, and then it gets about halfway, 2/3 up, and then all of a sudden starts to slip. But then it gets down to where there's greater pressure at the bottom, and it goes back up. So it literally starts to yo-yo. So what we do is one of two things. We will either stop the ball, take it, and take brake cleaner to it.
Okay.
To
All right.
clean off the residue or stuff from the hard rubber ball.
Yep.
And then sometimes we will then clean the belt also. Now the belt can be cleaned with simple, what we call lane cleaner, which of course is a material obviously designed to kind of break down the lane conditioner.
Mm-hmm.
In olden days, we actually used to, while it was running, we used to take a chisel and chisel off the basically
scrape the top on?
yeah, basically
okay.
give it some,
Yeah.
because like it becomes, I would say bird, it's not quite the right word, but it becomes solid.
Yeah.
So it's, of course, you have to be very careful doing it, but the belt at least is running in this direction. So if something happens, it just drops down. It's not, going to cause a problem, but you don't ever want to get your fingers caught at the top of that pulley.
No, you do not.
Because bad things will happen when it gets to that yoke assembly.
Oh my gosh.
bad things. So we always, this is why we keep the guards on, because even if you're walking across and fell,
oh yes,
it would be very bad.
Bad news. That's a strong motor. Not giving up.
Not giving up.
So B&M rails. B&Ms, they use for oiling the rails. They use a mixture of motor oil mixed with a chemical you could buy it. It's called Castrol Safety Draw. It's designed to coagulate around metal chips that are being drilled and pull out. So it's kind of like a waxy substance that you mix it up with to get the oil to stick to the track when you lubricate it. But it's the same thing. If you let it go dry, or it's really hot and haven't applied it in a while, it gums up and it sits on that surface. And then the only way to get that stuff off is to go through and scrape it off of the track. Otherwise, if you're ever running on a ride and you just kind of go over a spot, it just kind of feels like the train vibrated really hard for some reason. That's typically dried track lube sitting there making bumps. And as you start one bump, it produces more bumps, and the track lube just builds up, makes like a bumpy road. Nasty stuff. Mechanics love brake clean.
Brake cleaner, as it does amazing things. Keep it away from flame, though.
Oh, yes.
Bad things.
Flames, eyeballs, open cuts.
Where would you apply? Would that be at the station? Because you're normally not on the track somewhere, right? I don't ever recall seeing what looks like greasy parts of an Immelman turn.
Yeah. So we adopted a couple mindsets. One was a low spot oiling. So we would actually go out with a squeeze bottle and apply it to the low spots that got right next to the ground. That made it easy, so it'd pick up and run it. The supervisor actually implemented just oiling the wheels on the train and letting it take it around. And plenty of parks oil the transfer track. So the first thing the train gets on is the transfer track. So some parks, you'll see the transfer track is really oily and then nothing else is. But basically the idea is you put the oil into a slower area and it for a long time will pick the oil up and take it around the track. As opposed to the high speed area, it'll still pick it up and take it, but nowhere near as well as a slow area.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. The only other thing, one more thing I could show is the off spot mechanism. So
is this like the Allspark from Transformers?
Yes, kind of. I got to kind of try to get this right. So sometimes in bowling, what happens is you hit the pin, but it doesn't knock over.
Oh yeah, it slides. Yeah.
So what happens? There is what's called the off spot assembly. So on that table clevis up front, if for whatever reason the table physically cannot complete its regular circuit, the weight of the table will go on top of that pin temporarily while the drive shaft continues to complete its cycle. Then this mechanism will then grab back onto it and pick it back up. So if I cycle the machine, you're good. You're going to stay where you're at. That table's going to go down. It should hit that pin. And now the machine will just sit and wait and wait and wait. Invariably, it's going to call for help because it knows it's in an off-spot situation. We have to come as the technician and remove what's called the dead wood, the pins that have fallen over. Because by rule, you have to shoot the pin where it's standing.
Oh, really?
Yep. So we very carefully, you become very skilled at moving that hook around that I had.
Yep.
And there's the call for help.
Sweep error.
So it knows something's wrong. So we have to come and fix it.
Error.
And then we have a mechanical way to reverse the sweep. So basically, Ryan, we're taking the switch, which I guess is reversing the polarity of the motor. So this will reverse the polarity. And when I push the sweep run button, the sweep will go back up.
Interesting.
So it basically reverses its cycle.
But it's not an easy fix, right? You can't just go, hey, Alexa, fix my sweep error.
Correct.
Man.
Now, the newer ones we can program to automatically clear itself. But then if there's deadwood, by rule, we still have to come and clear it. So it's safer to keep the sweep arm down because whenever the technician has the rod in the machine, if a ball came, it could be very bad for both the ball and the technician.
I see people all the time, when the lane breaks down, or when it jams or something, I see people all the time will be waiting for it to be fixed, and then I'll see it. It kind of like makes me like, oh, but I understand. I'll see feet come down because they're up over the top and they get in front of the machine. I see feet come down, and I'm just like, man, you have a lot of faith in people not rolling a ball at your foot there, even though the sweep is down and it's guarding the pins. But I'm just like, kids and stuff, they don't know. They just they throw the ball. Like, is there anything you could do about that? Because you hear every alley has a ball rolling on it, so you can't really like audibly tell like that's my alley.
So it's a great question. The mechanics wear radios, so does the desk and the floor staff all have radio conversation. The problem that we see currently, not problem, but how we operate is if a pin comes out, because sometimes pins mix around just right, pin comes right under the sweep bar before the sweep bar can come down, so a pin comes out onto the lane. So if it's behind the wall, we have the technicians get it, but if we hear the radio call, pin in the channel lane 20 behind the wall, then both the floor person and the mechanic go, and the floor person just watches to make sure that the customer is not bowling. Mm-hmm. And if they see the customer getting up to bowl, they tell the customer, hey, hang on, the mechanic's hitting that pin.
Yeah.
Because if you stick that rod down there and then a ball hits it, that rod's going to go flying and bad things.
That's so much energy wrapped up in that ball.
It's the same thing whenever a technician has to get down on the lane. They will radio and say, hey, 20's down. I got to get down on the lane. They'll make sure they'll go down and tell the customer, hey, sorry, we have a technical problem. It's going to be a few minutes. And they'll make sure that nobody's bowling, and then they get down.
Wow.
So, but we normally, if it's on this side, we always tell them put the sweep down because the ball hits the sweep. That sweep will take the impact amazingly well. It's got rubber shock mounts on the side, so if it really was to get clipped, it would do that. The interlock. I know I can example. I'll show you the interlock.
You still got that dead wood down there.
Yeah, we're going to clear that off. So if, for example, I'm going to cycle the pin spotter, but I'm going to force overrun the sweep. So the sweep has started coming back, and you see how the table started to descend down and then it stopped itself?
Yep.
Because those cams they tell the pin spotter computer, I'm too close to the sweep bar. So the way to fix that, normal procedure, is the mechanic will get up here. There's going to be a call for help. That's fine. And we have to find the motor crank. So we have these located at different parts throughout the center. They're painted yellow, easy to look. So I'm going to we call her Crystal. Crystal's going to call for help. And oh no, it's because I never cleared the other call. So we're good. So out here, the motors have the ability to have a motor crank. So we have to unplug the power. So it's a simple twist lock plug.
This is your lockout right here, essentially, because you don't want a motor firing up with your hand on it, right?
Correct.
That's bad news.
So I'm going to take the motor. I'm going to reverse the sweep. So as I crank this, you're going to see the sweep slowly start to move to the point where the pin spotter computer says it's clear, and then it's going to automatically turn the table back on, unless I shut that switch off. Yeah, there it goes. So now that's going to continually run until it tries to finish its cycle. So I have to time plugging this in when I think it's safe, and then it finishes its cycle just fine.
Interesting.
That's the interlock feature. And then I would clear the call, tell the customer they can bowl.
It's simple and extremely complicated and elegant and brute force at the same time. Like, this is so incredibly complex. It's unbelievable. I love stuff like this, though. It's absolutely amazing.
The carb links. You know what a carb link is?
No.
So these little links right here. Oops, sorry. I can pop this off. I'll make sure I only do the one end. So now this one is the 10 pin is disconnected. Mm-hmm. We have this link that we can adjust the strength. It's a rod ends, and you can turn it in, turn it out, and it makes the strength on the Respot cell vary. And of course, if you get one of them out of adjustment for whatever reason, it can cause all of them not to work.
Okay.
So we're very careful about making sure we don't turn the carb link too much. And then once we get it, we snap it back on, and it's on.
Not a finite adjustment.
Yep. And then there's also a mechanism called the Paul assembly, not after my mechanic, P-A-W-L. Basically kind of looks like the Batman symbol. Even if those Respot cells are closed and the machine goes to try to set another set, it's going to open those fingers up as a fail-safe. So, oh, wait a minute. I'm going to reset this because this is in maintenance mode. Why won't the sweep run?
2032. Sweep error.
I'm at a loss to why the sweep won't run.
2032. Sweep error.
So this is one of those unknown problems that rides get.
Yes.
And you say, what caused the... So we're going to try to manually run. And it won't run. So is it not...
This is truly, you could be a ride mechanic, I swear to God. This is 100% ride call stuff right here.
Neither the table nor sweep will run.
2032. Sweep error.
Now I'm confused.
2032. Sweep error.
Oh, I should check by the cams. Because if they run by the cams... Nothing. All right. There we go. I got you. So there we go. That is a forced reset. Back to normal.
Right.
So I talk about beta testing. You can see on this this is called a Durabin, because originally these were made out of metal and had all sorts of parts. You see this little add-on piece that's got 2 screws?
Yeah.
This is the original design, which we tested, and we kept getting pin jams at the 8, and then they realized that they needed to make that sit higher. So they added this part for the first version, and then a whole bunch of the rest of them are the second version, which has that pre-molded into it.
So that little bump bar on the bottom basically hits that cam,
Yeah.
and lifts itself up just a little bit higher.
Just to get it so it's right.
Amazing.
Yeah. What else? Colored pins, which we run on special events. Got our logo on them.
How often does a pin come out?
It's kind of rare. I mean, it does happen. Usually it'll be a pile up where then it'll fall, it'll hit this bar, and then bounce out this way.
There's not really no real fear from it coming out.
If this guard is off,
Yeah.
they come out a bunch.
Oh, do they?
Yes.
Okay.
So we always make sure we leave the guards on. And if you've ever seen, it's happened to me, like I've been walking. I actually had it happen once where I went right between my legs.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh, dear Lord.
Oh,
because
man.
pins will come out. If a ball hits it, it can be pretty bad.
That'll ruin your day.
Damaged pins to be sold.
There you go. There you go.
So yeah,
That's
as you
that
can
casing
see,
he's talking about.
yeah, it's the perfect example. All right.
Yep.
So the stress fracture, then the wood starts to fail underneath. Yeah, and then
Yeah.
of course this gets a lot. There's the wood.
Oh, wow, look at that.
You know, so and that's how thick the sirloin is.
That's pretty thick. That's
It's crazy.
yeah.
Okay, what else? What other pin spotter questions am I not thinking of? Yeah, good luck, buddy. Hey, you did it. Good job. No clue.
Say nothing at casual.
That's impressive.
Wow, this has been amazing. Like this is some amazing stuff. This is truly what I love This is the reason why I do YouTube stuff, because I love this type of stuff. I love seeing it. I love to be around it.
Oh, we love you too, Ryan.
This is thank you. This is truly amazing. I love this. I'm so like, woo! This is awesome.
Let's you want to see hyper? Let me show you hyper. Hyper bowling.
Let's come on.
So let me show you how that works. You can make the 7-10 split fairly easily if this guard is not on.
Oh, really?
As a side note, you know, they always talk about
Does that actually affect how the pins kind of like, I call it pin action?
Oh,
Does
yeah.
that actually affect the pin action?
Yeah, it's designed to arrest the pins. Otherwise, it acts like basically a wall. The pins hit the wall and bounce back. So, let's...
Stay off the air gate. Don't do it.
That's right, don't do it.
That's so funny. Love it. There you go. It's the business end of a bowling alley right there.
Oh, our lane checked itself out. It must have been 2 hours. That's what the problem was. So this is the latest and greatest scoring system called BestX. Here on this touchscreen, I'm going to basically, we're going to acknowledge that we're not going to do anything stupid. But we have this choose your experience. We're going to do hyper bowling, and we'll start with hyper bowl. So here's the instructions. It's pretty simple. It's going to tell you, identify your target. So there's 2x, there's 3x, and there's 5x. So it's green, blue, yellow. And then avoid the red, but that'll get you 0. Hit a colored target and knock down pins. Just that easy. And for every pin you knock down, you get 100 points. So it's 1 ball per person per turn.
Okay, so you only get 1 shot.
Yep, and you can unlock levels. It's kind of like it's premised on a video game, right? Get stars, all sorts of stuff. So now the bumpers are automatically going to come up. They flash red as a warning because they're going to move. You're technically up first.
All right, so what do we got?
So you got the
green.
blue is 3 times. Green is 2 times.
Okay.
So you want to try to hit the blue section and knock down some pins.
All right, blue section, knock down some pins. Let's
Yep.
try this.
Yep. In theory, when
Let's
you do
try
that,
this.
the wall's going to react. The wall's going to basically tell you what multiplier you got.
All right, so I want to stay off the green. All right.
Stay off the green. Avoid the
Figure
red.
this out. Here we go.
Ryan's first shot, ladies and gentlemen. Look at that. Professional.
Oh!
Well, it's very good. Oh, my God. Hyper shot on the first one. You have found your calling.
Oh, my gosh.
Good
If
job,
you don't
buddy.
subscribe
You're not in the
now, you've got to subscribe now. You got to subscribe now. I just made that first time.
That was impressive. Now I'm not going to get... You're going to beat me.
Oh, my gosh.
That was awesome. Yeah. So the game obviously is based on that. Yeah, I hit too early, so I only got 900. So how this works, basically there's 6 sensors that cross the lane. So like if you look kind of down this way, you see all these little red LEDs, that's the first sensor.
Oh, okay.
And then there's, farther down there's more.
Red.
There's also sensors in here. So it's called the long sensor. So there's a sensor that is basically like this infrared beam going all the way down to the other end. So based on, again, it's geometry, I guess, based on how fast the ball is going and when it hits the rail, it knows exactly on the rail where it hit it because it's a fixed distance.
Wow.
Some pretty cool triangulation stuff, but they figured out how to do it.
Yeah.
So when I throw this, so you remember earlier the tracker was showing the LED, so it knew where it was
Yes.
distance-wise.
Yes.
So based on the timing of when it hits, breaks the beam on the outside, it knows it hit the blue. So
Wow.
that's how hyper works. Pretty ingenious, actually.
That really is. That's so much fun. Like,
Yeah.
wow.
So family, I mean, all sorts of people can play hyper. You don't have to be a great bowler,
Yeah.
and win at hyper. We
That-
always say it's a...
That is genuinely fun. Like, That's a whole nother reason to come down and go
Yeah.
bowling. You know, that's wow.
We actually think of it like another attraction.
Yeah.
So-
Oh yeah. That is awesome.
Yep, that's hyper bowling.
Wow. Come down and check out hyper bowling at Sun Valley Lanes. Wow, that's fun. You guys do all the all
Yes,
the
we
black
got all the
lights and
lights
everything
and all that
else
stuff, too.
Yeah.
And
I
of
always
course,
found that distracting because I'm just sitting there trying to bowl and it's all like, oh, okay.
you gotta have a little fun.
Yeah.
We have times for that too.
Yeah. Yep.
Every amusement park has back of house.
All right.
So
the other behind the scenes tour.
a lot of food sold after we closed
Oh yeah.
they were still picking stuff up.
Doing parties and everything else.
So we have to power up the games, the arcade games. So at the start of every day, these 13 switches, because we don't run the game overnight.
This is where in the amusement park, this is where we all dread because it's been a nice quiet morning and we've all been having our coffee and relaxing. And then you start to hear the park music come up and it's just like, oh crap.
Here's all the stuffed animals that you know.
Yep.
It's the same thing. So we have to power up laser tag, which is those 4 switches.
4 switches, that's how you power up laser tag.
Yeah, but
In case you guys ever break in and want to do it, here you go.
Now, the light switch is on the other side for this room, but this should be powering up. Yeah, so simply it's a 24-player arena themed a military like Call of Duty.
Oh yeah.
My father served in World War II. He had me at White Lake. God bless him. So all the military branches are represented in some way, shape, or form. Navy, Air Force, Space Force. They're all in here somehow.
This is cool.
So
this is great theming in here. Who did the theming?
a company called Creative Works. They're out of
Creative
Indianapolis. They've done some big projects for some parks.
Boy, this is great stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, black light theming is really hard to do. If you do it just a hair wrong, it looks horrible.
Yeah, and they did this really well. There's some other stuff in it. We have artificial intelligent targets. So through a company called Laser Blast, which provides our vests and stuff, an Apache helicopter will fly in on this wall over here. You'll see a video, and it comes from this projection system where it'll fly in on this wall, and there'll be like this cloud aura going on, and then all of a sudden it starts to shoot, but then you see that target thing come in, like you see in the movies of the target thing, and you shoot it, it blows up in real time.
Oh, wow.
It's pretty cool.
Wow.
Again, technology is changing and
Yeah,
advancing
absolutely.
and some of that stuff. So
64.
And of course, the charging stations for the vests.
Yeah.
All these, they got to be powered up. They'll come online.
You ever have to send these out for repair?
Yeah, sometimes. Invariably, I mean, they get handled by kids and dropped and banged and some other stuff. But they've been fairly reliable. Some of the parts we can change on our own. So again, some of these games are powering up. So they're spinning by themselves. Now loading on Minecraft Dungeons.
Yep.
Stuff. All these will come up online. They'll link to a server called Intercard, which tracks the tickets and all that stuff. And of course, we got some cranes. But then we'll go down to the other end of the facility. So originally, Ryan, this was built as a 32-lane traditional center. 1977, when I got here in 88, it was just 32 lanes, and it was just this part. Right before the pandemic, summer of 2019, I started a $4.5 million renovation and expansion to add the arcade, the laser tag, the mini golf, the sand volleyball, the big bar area.
Oh my gosh,
bar
look
and
at
restaurant. And of course, there's an outdoor fire pit, which we could go out, but fire pit's got TVs, all sorts of stuff out there, and a green space that we do cornhole. Well, I bought the building next door. This was the old taxi cab dispatch. So it has technology-based mini golf. It keeps score for you, and it's points-based. Of course, I got to power it up, we can come back here. And then the other thing we have, because we agree with you, we were looking for summer income. So this is our 3 outdoor sand volleyball courts.
Yeah.
So we run sand volleyball in the summer. Turn on the string lights. Turn on the effect lights. And then the computers. So they're all going to power up. So what happens, and of course this will take a little, we're going to see some of the holes are coming on. So you can see here, for example, see the tee box is lit up. There's a sensor in the tee box. There's a sensor in the hole. And then there's hazard sensors along the way, as well as bonus point sensors. So what will happen is when the games boot up, there'll be a whole map. It'll show you how you can earn points, how you can lose points based on what you do along the way. But the sooner the ball gets in the hole, the more points you get.
Wow.
So, and again, it
That's
keeps
cool.
score for you. And it does, if 40,000 is a good score if you're playing Lucky Putt. But it's different. It's fun. So people, again, all ages can do this. But again, it's a little bit like an amusement park, right? We've got all these things, moving parts and sensors, and there's a computer in every hole, and you scan your putter. So your putter is how it identifies you.
Oh, okay.
On this kiosk, you check in, you scan your putter, you give it your name, pick your emoji. And whenever you scan, you can play in any order. You can break up your group. It doesn't care because it's a computer, right? But it's just fun. It's different. It rounds us out pretty well.
This is awesome.
Yeah. And then, like I said, we do cornhole out here in the green space, which is kind of covered with snow right now.
Yeah.
And then this bar opens up for the volleyball as well as Lucky Putt. So
Very nice.
yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
So much more than just a bowling alley.
Yeah, there's a lot to it, right? I mean,
Now, as the owner, you said you took out a $4 million loan?
yeah, $4.5 million loan.
How much of a absolute? How many late nights did you have when the pandemic set in?
It's funny
Because just that. That's giving me anxiety just thinking about pulling a loan out and then suddenly the pandemic hits within a year.
So we
It's like,
were
oh my gosh.
smack dab in the middle of construction when it occurred. We had gutted that building. That was all gutted down. The frame and most of the walls were up on the laser tag arcade. Actually, the laser tag was getting done fairly well. When the day it happened, I told the full-time staff, there was 13 of us. I said, okay, guys. I said, I've decided. You're all staying on. I'm going to pay you. And we're there. And I actually used the analogy. I said, it's just going to be like riding a roller coaster. Either we're going to make it back to the station or we're going to come off the rails in a blaze of glory. I said, it's going to be one or the other. So let's just hang on for the ride and see what happens. So,
Oh my gosh.
ironically, it worked out okay because we were wrestling with the thought of trying to operate the grill and the bar while we were open, because we had never planned on shutting down. Well, we ended up shutting down for 76 days due to the pandemic. So literally the next day, on like the 18th of March, I think it was the 17th when we closed down, I told the general contractor, let's just rip everything out. They're saying 4 weeks. It's not going to be 4 weeks. I knew enough to know that it wasn't going to be 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So we just got everything. And then my staff, we actually raised the ceiling out above the lanes because I knew the concept of this wall was coming with the manufacturer.
Okay.
Because we do this beta testing. I'm privy to some insights about some of this equipment that's coming. So I wanted to make sure I could get this wall in. So at the time, I didn't tell anybody on staff, right? Because I'm covered with an NDA. You know what an NDA is, right?
Yeah.
But that was the purpose of that. So we raised that. We cleaned stuff that we never even thought about cleaning before. But invariably, cleanliness is probably the most important thing, right? I mean, people think of parks. It's no different, right? You go to a park and the bathrooms are messy and, the landscaping doesn't look good. And it's not quite the same experience where if you go somewhere that everything's on top of it. So we always try to make sure everything's clean first and foremost. And then, try to ensure that the rest of the guest experience goes the same way.
Yeah. Cleanliness is very key because it doesn't matter if you're going to an amusement park or your local entertainment center. If you get there and the place, even if you have a good time, but the place is just dingy and ugly, and you get the perception that it's not maintained. And even if you don't care about the maintenance end of it, you'll still just have that feeling like it wasn't a good experience. And the good experience is what all of us are after. So yeah, you have to keep up the perception and make sure it's maintained well.
Correct.
Clean, well lit, when it's lit properly.
Yeah. Yes. Correct. We got all the lights
stuff,
on.
Yeah. Well,
It changes.
You come in sometimes and you're doing the bowling with the dark lights and everything, and then it's like, oh man, it's so dark in here. It's like on purpose.
On purpose.
On
Yep.
purpose.
On
That's the
purpose.
way it's done on purpose.
Yep. Yeah, we're kind of in the middle right now. We'll turn
Yeah.
more lights on for the regular bowling and we turn
Yep.
these off for the glow stuff. But this is the cleaning mode. We're currently
Yes.
in cleaning mode.
Yep. This is the behind the scenes after park hours, all that other stuff.
Yeah.
This is the good stuff that everyone tunes in for.
Yeah, of course we got food, we got drinks, just like parks. I mean, so you're managing all these different things, right?
And a pro shop.
And a pro shop. That's right.
This is one of the things that's kind of dwindling out of a lot of bowling alleys is the pro shop.
Correct.
I mean, I'm surprised how many alleys I've been to, which honestly it hasn't been a ton, but I mean I've been to so many alleys and there's been nothing to go get, just the basic stuff. I just need some talc. I just need some of this, or I need a towel or something.
Bag, whatever the case might be.
Yeah, and it's not there.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's the good pro shop. Glad.
Yep.
That's a good thing.
Yep, we drew a bowling ball, yeah, the whole 9 yards.
All right, so I think that's going to be it for this video. I'm down here at Sun Valley Lanes and Games in Lincoln, Nebraska. This place is really awesome. If you haven't been out yet, if you're anywhere near the area, I'd say at least within a couple hours drive, come on down and check this place out. Get in on some of this bowling out here. What's it called again? That one?
Hyper bowling.
Hyper bowling.
Yeah.
Get in on this hyper bowling. Man, that is some crazy stuff. I love it. Come out here. There's miniature golf, arcade, laser tag, bowling, and a pro shop. And you get a pro shop along with that too. John, thank you so much for having me out. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Ryan. Glad I could do it.
Wish you well. Stay warm for sure.
Thank you.
And what do we say?
Stay off the air gates.
That's right.
Don't forget.
All right. Take care. Bye. Thanks for helping me today.
Ryan's first shot, ladies and gentlemen. Look at that. Professional.
Oh.
Well, it's very good. Oh, my God. Hyper shot on the first one. You have found your calling.
Oh, my gosh.
Good job, buddy. You're not in this.
You've got to subscribe now. You got to subscribe now. Just made that first time.
That was impressive.